Arctic Monkeys have reached untouchable status and can seemingly do no wrong. But if I used to stand in awe of them, I've long ago stopped caring. And if I make my points well, I think you'll understand why. Well, the way down is gonna be rough, and Alex Turner is about to discover a horrible truth about himself. See, the thing is, sometimes life puts you in a totally objective situation. Like when you don't know which party the guy talking on the radio is from, but he's making sense. Or when you don't know which tune is what, or which song is where. Or like when I discovered the Arctic Monkeys fairly late in the game back in 2008. Back then I was still going to the Tower Records to ask for recommendations from the staff there. Get a nice pile of CDs together, spend a couple of hours at the store, pick up a bunch of new music. Nostalgia. And this one guy asked me if I had heard of the Arctic Monkeys, who by this point had released 2 full albums plus an EP in between. The debut, Whatever People Think I Am, That's What I'm Not, and their second album, Favorite Worst Nightmare. Listening to the debut album was an absolute shocking experience. Here was something refreshing, crazy energetic, and totally unique. Unfortunately, the fun stopped there. Their second album was a complete disappointment from the moment I heard it. Sure, there was some good songs there, but it was missing that crazy energy, and it sounded like drummer Matt Helder's voice was ringing way too loud in the control room. Most of all, it was not refreshing, not crazy energetic, and totally not unique. Humbug, which came after FWN and which I still bought on blind faith based on that debut effort, is a total abomination of an album. Just try playing the first few seconds of each song and then skipping to the next one. You'll quickly get the idea. It became quite obvious to me that the Monkeys were now just trying to shoot above their station, release what appear to be varied albums in their attempt to cement a place in rocker heaven, thinking that whatever they end up putting out will be well received. And so far they've been right. But here's the crux of the problem. Things have gotten so bad that videos are now popping out explaining to me that the new Arctic Monkeys album is good because, well, change is good. Is it? I guess I first became aware that things were going slightly awry when a few years after Humbug, and having completely lost touch with the happenings around the band, I now discovered that a new generation of AM fans had sprouted up who were not aware at all of their original music. Listening to Why'd You Always Call Me When You're High was truly depressing. This is what had become of that talented band. It was now more obvious than ever to me that AM were mistaking success for quality. And here's the deeper issue, and it's something that other bands suffer from too. As a band led by one principal songwriter who really doesn't have that much of a vocal range, it turns out they really didn't have the capacity to actually reinvent themselves. All they could do was change, well, something. Because change is good, right? There have been very few bands to successfully reinvent themselves and actually stay relevant. Not surprisingly, those bands had been doing it their entire career, and not as a response to something or the other. Whether people were paying attention, like with the Beatles or U2, and whether they weren't, like with REM. And while many people like to point to Radiohead as a good example of a band who successfully altered their sound, I asked them to point out the last Radiohead hit single, or at least well-known song, then explain to them how they've totally missed the point. Fading away into total oblivion while still marketing to your existing fans is not an actual feat. In fact, AM have been doing much better in that regard, staying in the conversation but not really inspiring anyone anymore. Making music, but not the kind that anyone is going to be listening to in 3 years. While the first album got me trying to write a song about how I couldn't write an Arctic Monkeys song, it was called There Ain't No Arctic Monkeys and it only has a chorus. Their last album has me making videos about how much they suck. As far as I can tell, the Monkeys are hell-bent on being remembered as the next Beatles, maintaining popularity while oozing sophistication. Sorry Alex, I love you, but you ain't no John Lennon, and look around you, there ain't no Paul McCartney there either. Also, no one knows what the fuck a mirror ball is. But AM are now just a more harmonious version of Oasis, and we all know how that ended up. And that's a shame, because their goals are obviously lofty ones. But if you do something well, and then you start doing things that you don't do well, that's not good change. I've even made the analogy early on in my Bring Back Arctic Monkeys crusade to Michael Jordan, who at the peak of his career left the Chicago Bulls to take up minor league baseball. Surprise, surprise, he sucked at that. And he came crawling back to the Bulls. Surprise, surprise, the Bulls went right back to the top. And good, because who wants to watch the world's greatest basketball player fail at a different sport? AM need to stick to what they're good at, which is pretty good advice for anyone, isn't it? Now, if you do look at what's changed between the first and second album, there's one obvious difference. Andy Nicholson, the original Arctic Monkeys bassist, who left after the debut release. Now, I don't know what his influence on the band was, but I'm starting to get a decent idea.
Just never mind, send someone else to thank them. This one's getting